Lucy gripped the handle of her carry-on suitcase as she hurried through the bustling airport terminal. She had barely slept the night before, thanks to all her worries piling up. Her part-time job barely paid the rent, and she felt stuck in an endless loop of rejection emails for better positions. But this trip to Chicago was meant to be a fresh start, a chance for an in-person job interview that could turn her life around. Overhead announcements echoed, reminding passengers of final boarding calls. Lucy picked up her pace, her sandals slapping against the polished floor. She was out of breath by the time she reached her boarding gate, and as she made her way onto the plane, she only half glanced at her boarding pass. She just wanted to get to her seat, catch her breath, and try to calm her nerves. She scanned the crowded rows, spotting an empty window seat. Perfect, she thought. She wasn't a fan of middle seats, and her heart lightened at the prospect of gazing out the window, letting the clouds distract her from her anxious mind. Without a second glance at the seat number, Lucy slipped into the vacant spot. A blissful sigh escaped her as she finally sat down, shoulders relaxing. She thought the flight would at least give her an uninterrupted block of time to plan how she'd impress her potential new employer. A moment later, a low, polite voice interrupted her daydream. "Sorry, miss, I believe you're in my seat." Lucy jumped, startled from her thoughts. She blinked up at a tall man in a neatly pressed shirt and expensive-looking slacks. He stood quietly, ticket in hand, while other passengers fidgeted around him, eager to stow their luggage and sit down. Embarrassment heated Lucy's cheeks. She dug in her bag for her boarding pass, double-checking the row number. Sure enough, she'd made a silly mistake, confusing the digits. She stammered an apology, but the man gave her a small smile that eased her discomfort. "No problem," he said. "It's a busy flight, easy to mix up." His tone was warm, and it surprised her. Well, that's a relief, she thought. At least he wasn't going to make a scene. As Lucy stood to switch seats, the flight attendant arrived to sort out the seating mix-up. It turned out Lucy's actual seat was in the same row, right next to the man. Another stroke of luck. Instead of being escorted down the aisle, she found herself settling into the seat just one over from him. She gave a nervous little laugh. "Sorry again, I guess the day's already off to a chaotic start." He responded with a gentle nod, then extended his hand. "I'm Hayden," he said. His voice was calm and self-assured, the kind that made people pay attention without him having to force it. Lucy shook his hand and introduced herself. His palm was warm, and for a moment she wondered if he noticed how clammy hers felt. She sneaked a few glimpses at him from the corner of her eye as the flight attendant walked the aisles making final announcements. Hayden had a strong jawline and short dark hair that looked effortlessly styled. He kept fiddling with his phone, texting someone in swift bursts, and Lucy noticed he had a certain air of importance about him. Maybe it was the crisp, tailored shirt or the fine leather watch, but he seemed the kind of person you wouldn't expect to find in the economy section. Her mind itched with curiosity. Why was he here instead of first class? But she brushed it off as none of her business. Once the plane took off and the cabin grew quiet, Lucy felt her nerves settle. She gazed out the window as the clouds rolled by, thinking about tomorrow's job interview. She had pinned all her hopes on this interview. If she nailed it, she might finally be able to quit the endless scramble of side hustles, but doubts crept in. She worried she'd be overshadowed by more qualified candidates. A sigh escaped her lips, drawing Hayden's attention. "Everything okay?" he asked, turning toward her. He had paused whatever he was reading on his phone. Lucy gave a half smile, partly embarrassed to have caught his concern. "Just feeling a bit on edge," she admitted. "Got a big job interview coming up. It's kind of a make-or-break situation for me." Her honesty surprised her. She usually wasn't so open with strangers, but something about his gentle demeanor invited trust. Hayden nodded, brow furrowing in empathy. "Job interviews can be tough. I've been through my fair share, but if you've prepared, that's half the battle won." His eyes flicked across her face. There was a clarity in them that made Lucy suspect he really did know a thing or two about hiring or being interviewed, yet she couldn't quite place what kind of work he might do. Tech, finance. He definitely didn't look like someone who struggled to make ends meet. The flight droned on, and Lucy found it oddly comfortable talking to Hayden. They traded tidbits about their lives. She mentioned her design background and how she'd been freelancing for small businesses. He asked insightful questions about her experience, as though job interviews were second nature to him. Her curiosity grew. What if he was just some mid-level manager? But something told her he was more than that. On the surface, their chance encounter was nothing special, but Lucy felt something stirring in her chest, an unspoken intuition telling her this was no ordinary seatmate. At one point, Hayden excused himself to take a phone call in the aisle. Lucy could see him from a distance, speaking low into the phone. His posture was poised and his expression was serious. She could see him nodding once or twice as though in deep negotiation. Then he returned, face composed. He slid back into his seat and apologized politely for the intrusion. Lucy shrugged it off, but a part of her found the moment deeply intriguing. The phone call seemed high stakes, or at least important. Before the plane landed, Lucy and Hayden exchanged contact information. It was a natural enough gesture. He'd offered to connect her with a friend who worked in recruitment if her upcoming interview didn't pan out. The sincerity behind his offer moved her. And beneath the professional courtesy, Lucy sensed a spark of genuine interest in his eyes. When she walked off the plane, it felt as though her heartbeat was pulsing in her ears. That chance meeting left her with a fluttery feeling she hadn't known she was missing. The next day, Lucy's nerves almost got the better of her. She wore her best blazer and toted a slim portfolio of her design samples. The building downtown was tall and sleek, the kind that practically smelled of success. She tried not to tremble as she rode the elevator up to the 35th floor, where the marketing firm's office was located. The interview itself lasted nearly an hour. Lucy believed she'd done well. She answered questions clearly, displayed her portfolio with confidence, and even managed a few small jokes to break the tension. Yet, as she left the office, she felt uncertain. Competition was stiff. She couldn't help replaying some of her answers, wondering if they'd been good enough. When she emerged into the bright city sunlight, her phone buzzed. It was a text from Hayden. "How'd it go? Feeling good about it?" Lucy's lips curled into a smile, surprised at how quickly he'd followed up. She texted back, "It went okay, I think, not sure yet, but thanks for checking in." She added a smiley face, feeling oddly excited that someone she barely knew cared. Before she could overthink it, Hayden sent another text, inviting her to join him for coffee if she had the time. Lucy hesitated only for a second before agreeing. Her heart pounded as she typed her reply, eyes shining with an eagerness she couldn't quite hide, even from herself. They met at a quiet cafe near the financial district. Hayden arrived first, seated at a corner table with a small cappuccino in front of him. He looked even more polished in daylight, wearing a tailored suit jacket that highlighted his broad shoulders. Lucy felt underdressed in comparison, but his easy smile put her at ease. "You found the place okay?" he asked, standing to greet her. His presence was magnetic yet calm, a paradox that left her fascinated. Lucy nodded, taking a seat across from him. She noticed he ordered her a latte. Something about the small gesture told her he was observant. She hadn't mentioned that lattes were her favorite, but apparently he'd figured it out from their conversation on the plane. They talked about her interview, her anxieties about the future, and then drifted into safer territory, favorite books, the best spots to eat in Chicago, and so on. As they chatted, Lucy realized she felt surprisingly relaxed. The typical first meeting jitters were absent, replaced by a gentle curiosity about each other's worlds. In one candid moment, Lucy asked, "So what exactly do you do, Hayden? I get the sense you're pretty familiar with business, and that phone call on the plane, it sounded intense." His face flickered for an instant like he was weighing how much to reveal. Then he simply said, "I work in business management. My schedule can be unpredictable." Lucy pressed no further, though the vague response left her with an itch of intrigue. A friend, a colleague. Or maybe it was something bigger, something he didn't want to share just yet. Over the next few days, Lucy and Hayden traded messages. Sometimes it was casual. He'd send a quirky photo from a corporate meeting, or she'd snap a pic of her cat dozing on her design sketches. Other times, they delved deep into the complexities of pursuing careers in a competitive city. It felt more natural than Lucy expected, given how abruptly they'd met. Part of her wanted to be cautious. After all, she'd known him for less than a week. But a part of her blossomed, craving the sense of connection that was growing between them. A week passed, and Lucy had no updates on the job she'd interviewed for. Each day that her phone remained silent, her worry increased, and she felt a familiar gloom settling over her. During a phone call with Hayden, she couldn't hide her disappointment. "I keep refreshing my inbox, hoping for news," she said. "I just don't want to go back home empty-handed." His voice was soothing on the line. "Sometimes these decisions take a while. Patience can feel like a punishment, but it's often out of our control." That said, if you're still in town, maybe you'd like to see something new. It might help take your mind off the wait. That invitation led them to a small art gallery Lucy had mentioned wanting to visit. Inside the gallery, abstract paintings swirled with bold colors, capturing Lucy's imagination. Hayden walked beside her, hands tucked into his pockets, pausing from time to time to admire a piece. Lucy felt an undercurrent of excitement. It was as if they were stepping into each other's worlds, one painting at a time. Hayden made thoughtful remarks, surprising her with well-informed opinions about art technique, and Lucy teased that he might be a closet artist. He chuckled but didn't elaborate on how he knew so much. As they wandered deeper into the gallery, Lucy's phone buzzed. She lifted it from her purse, her breath caught in her throat, and she read the screen. A short email from the marketing firm. "We regret to inform you," she sighed, heart plunging. So that was it, another rejection. She must have made a small sound of disappointment because Hayden placed a gentle hand on her arm. She showed him the screen, and he frowned sympathetically. The flurry of bright colors on the gallery walls felt at odds with the sinking feeling that threatened to swallow her. Lucy felt tears burning behind her eyes, frustrated at yet another dead end. Hayden guided her into a quieter corner of the gallery, away from the crowd. He spoke softly. "I'm sorry, I know you had your hopes up." Lucy struggled to keep her composure. I've been trying so hard, it feels like I'm walking in circles, I don't know what else to do." He gave her shoulder a reassuring squeeze, then said the most surprising thing. "I might have some ideas for you if you're open to hearing them. Actually, I've been thinking about something. My company occasionally takes on freelance designers, and though it's a bit unorthodox, I might be able to connect you with the right people." Lucy's watery eyes widened. "Really?" She realized she knew close to nothing about his company, but the offer felt like a lifeline. She quickly blinked, not wanting to seem too desperate. "I mean, yes, of course, I'd be grateful, but are you sure?" Hayden nodded, and for the first time, Lucy spotted a bit of tension flicker across his face. It was the look of someone who knew there was more to the story than he was letting on. "Let me see what I can do," he said gently, "and I'll let you know soon." Lucy's optimism revived, if only a bit, as they ended their gallery visit. Still, the memory of all her past disappointments tempered her hope. There was something so mysterious about Hayden, like every time she tried to draw closer, a curtain fell over his real life. But he never failed to show genuine kindness. As they stood outside in the crisp evening air, Lucy found herself staring at him, an unspoken question in her eyes. "Who are you, really?" Hayden, for his part, seemed to sense her silent confusion. He brushed a hand lightly across her arm. "We'll figure this out," he said, and it felt to Lucy as though a promise had been made, even if it was yet unwritten. The next day, she was back at her small rented room, scanning job boards. Dispirited, she sipped at a lukewarm coffee and found her mind drifting to thoughts of Hayden. Her phone buzzed around lunchtime, an unfamiliar number. She picked up only to hear a chipper voice on the other end explaining they were from Divinity Innovations, a major corporate entity, and they'd received a word from Mr. Stone about a possible design role. Lucy's jaw nearly dropped. Mr. Stone? That was Hayden's last name. Then she recalled he'd never actually told her his full name, only Hayden. She scrambled to recover from her shock, speaking politely as the caller set up an informal, creative chat with her. The conversation was scheduled for that afternoon. Heart-pounding, Lucy set down the phone and frantically began pulling up her best work samples. A wave of gratitude and curiosity washed over her. How did Hayden pull this off in less than 24 hours? Who did he talk to? Her mind replayed fragments of that phone call from the airplane. Was he pulling strings from some high position? Lucy swallowed down the swirl of emotions. One step at a time. The creative chat went better than Lucy could have hoped. By the end of it, the Divinity Innovations rep mentioned that the department head was quite impressed. She heard phrases like, "We'd love to see more of your work and we'll be in touch soon." After she hung up, Lucy literally jumped for joy in her tiny room, letting out an excited squeal. Without thinking, she called Hayden. His line rang only once before he answered. "It went well, didn't it?" he said, his voice carrying a certain lightness as though he already knew. Lucy couldn't restrain her laughter. "Is there anything you do know? It went amazingly, actually. Thank you, I don't even know how to thank you." She paused, words tumbling over themselves. "But Hayden, what exactly is your position at Divinity Innovations?" He went quiet for a moment, so quietly Lucy thought the call dropped. Then he exhaled softly. I was hoping to share that with you in person, he admitted. Let's just say it's more than a typical management role. Lucy's pulse raced. She could feel the weight behind those words. Before she could press further, Hayden proposed they meet again that evening for dinner. Something about his tone suggested that this time he'd have real answers. When Lucy arrived at the address Hayden texted her, she found a high-rise building in one of the city's priciest neighborhoods. The lobby was lined with marble floors and sleek modern art. A doorman greeted her politely, already aware of her arrival. Lucy's nerves were a bundle of electricity as she rode the private elevator up to the penthouse level. Why on earth would Hayden be meeting her here? The doors opened to reveal a lavish apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the sparkling city skyline. In the center of the living room stood Hayden, dressed casually in a sweater and dark jeans, waiting with a small, uncertain smile. "Welcome," he said. "I figured it's time you saw the real me." Lucy took a few trembling steps forward, eyes wide at the opulence all around her. The plush furniture, the abstract paintings, everything screamed luxury. Hayden gestured for her to sit. He took a seat beside her, leaning forward so their knees almost touched. His gaze flickered to the windows as though searching for courage in the city lights. "I'm the founder and CEO of Divinity Innovations," he finally said. "It's a tech and design conglomerate my parents started, and I expanded after I took over." Lucy's mind reeled. He was the CEO, a well-known one, apparently, if she cared to check the business press. That explained the phone calls, the expensive clothes, the hush-hush aura. But then why was he in economy class on that flight? Reading the questions in her eyes, Hayden continued. "I'd gone to an event in New York and all the first-class seats were booked last minute. I had to settle for economy, which was, well, a stroke of fate because otherwise we never would have met." A faint smile curved at his lips. "I'm sorry for not telling you sooner. People often treat me differently once they know. I wasn't sure how to bring it up without making you think I was throwing my status around. But you needed help, and I didn't want to stand by when I knew I could do something." Lucy stared at him, words failing her. She felt a swirl of astonishment, gratitude, and even a hint of anger for having been kept in the dark. But most of all, she felt overwhelmed. "I appreciate it," she said quietly. "I guess I understand why you were hesitant." She reached for his hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. "It's a lot to take in, but I think I'm okay with this. I like you for who you are, not the CEO title or the fancy apartment. I mean, it's wow, but it doesn't change the person I've gotten to know." Relief lit up Hayden's features, and Lucy realized how much he'd feared her reaction. She saw it in the way he exhaled, shoulders loosening. "That means more than you know," he admitted. "We're still early in, well, everything. But I want to explore this. Us, I just didn't want secrets to stand in the way." They spent the next hour talking, truly talking, about their pasts, their aspirations, the insecurities that haunted them. Hayden described how he was thrust into leadership after finishing business school and the crushing expectations he'd navigated ever since. Lucy shared her struggles to find stable work, the families she designed posters for, the small towns she'd outgrown. With every word, it felt like the distance between them shrank. An unexpected hush fell between them, a comfortable silence heavy with possibility. Lucy's pulse quickened. She had so many questions about his life, but right now she only wanted to be near him. "This is surreal," she whispered, gazing at the breathtaking city skyline. "If someone had told me last week that I'd be standing in a penthouse talking to a CEO about my future career, I'd have laughed in their face." Hayden laughed softly. "I know what you mean. Life can pivot in the blink of an eye." They ordered takeout. Hayden insisted on something comforting, not fancy, and settled onto the plush couch. Lucy kicked off her shoes. She was hyper-aware of his nearness, the warmth of his arm brushed against hers. While they waited for the food, he poured them both sparkling water. When Lucy reached for her glass, her hand accidentally grazed his. The jolt of electricity that shot through her was undeniable. His eyes met hers, a quiet question simmering just beneath the surface. Tentatively, he moved closer. In that quiet moment, Lucy felt her heart fluttering, tension building, the air crackling with a subtle magnetic energy. Then came an unexpected ring of the doorbell, snapping them out of the moment. The takeout had arrived. They both laughed, though Lucy felt a mixture of relief and longing. The rest of the evening unfolded in a relaxed, almost playful manner as they ate straight from the containers, joking about how they were balancing expensive furniture with greasy noodles. It was a delightful contrast. Rich surroundings, casual meal, two people who still barely knew each other but were somehow forging a deep bond. Days passed in a blur of new developments. Lucy was offered a project-based contract with Divinity Innovations to redesign part of their branding. Though the role was short-term, the pay was good, and it was a foot in the door she desperately needed. Meanwhile, she spent more and more time with Hayden learning bits about corporate decision-making, while he learned about her design processes and the messy corner of her bedroom she turned into an art studio. They fell into a rhythm. She'd experiment with designs, share them with him, and they'd refine the concepts late into the evening, often side by side in his apartment or at a quiet coffee shop. It was on one of those evenings, after a particularly long brainstorming session, that Lucy felt her phone vibrate in her pocket. She realized it was nearly 8 p.m. She'd lost track of time. "I can't believe how late it is," she murmured, leaning back in her chair and stretching her arms. Her eyes flitted across Hayden, noticing how intently he studied her face. A playful spark danced in his eyes. "I've been meaning to say something," he said, leaning forward. "All this time we've spent together, sometimes it feels like we jumped from strangers on a plane to something more." He trailed off, searching her gaze. "I've never really done anything like this before, mixing business with personal matters. But every time I see you, I just know I want to keep seeing you." Lucy felt warmth blossom in her chest. She reached out, placing her hand over his. "I know, it feels a little crazy, but it also feels right. I just worry, what if you're bored or your employees disapprove of you dating someone who's freelancing under your company? What if people say I'm only in it for the perks?" She voiced her deepest fear, her words trembling. Hayden's expression softened, and he gently squeezed her hand. "You're no gold digger, Lucy. You didn't even know who I was when we met. If anything, I came after you. If people talk, they talk. Let them." He paused, voice thick with emotion. "I've worked under public scrutiny for years, but what's happening between us, I don't want to lose it because I'm worried about rumor mills." Lucy let out a shaky breath, some invisible knot in her chest loosening. They spent the next hour discussing potential fallout, how they might present themselves in the company, the pros and cons of telling people about their relationship. Ultimately, they decided to keep it discreet until they both felt comfortable. There was no rush. They were still learning each other's corners. Days blended into weeks, filled with stolen kisses in hallway corners and discreet hand touches during business lunches. Lucy's temporary contract blossomed into something more permanent as her designs gained traction with the executive team. One evening, she presented in front of a small panel of directors, with Hayden quietly observing from the back of the room. Though she was nervous, Lucy nailed her presentation, fielding questions with poise and showcasing the brand's fresh new angle. Afterward, the directors offered her a longer-term position, praising her creativity. She wanted to cheer out loud, but she caught Hayden's proud gaze across the room. A silent victory passed between them. This moment was about her merit, about proving herself, not just about who she was dating. Yet for all the progress, secrets have a way of seeding tension. Hayden's grandmother was throwing an anniversary gala for the company, and it was a major event. Everyone in the corporate world would be there, plus outside press, major clients, and potential investors. Lucy longed to stand by Hayden's side, but they hadn't discussed how public their relationship was. Several times, Lucy hovered on the edge of bringing it up, but some fear held her back. Maybe she was afraid of stepping too far into his spotlight, or maybe she feared his family's reactions. Finally, the evening of the gala arrived. Lucy paced her small living space wearing a simple but elegant black dress. Hayden had invited her, but in a non-committal way, like a polite courtesy. "I don't want you to feel pressured," he'd said. "You're welcome to come if you like, but it's mostly a bunch of stuffy speeches and handshakes." Lucy knew better. This was a significant event, a hallmark in the company's history. She wanted to be there for him. Heart-pounding, she decided to show up on her own terms, a supportive partner who wasn't ashamed of their connection. She grabbed her coat and headed out. The gala venue was a grand hotel ballroom, glittering with chandeliers. Men in tuxedos and women in ball gowns mingled across the polished floors. Lucy slipped through the crowd, scanning for Hayden. She finally spotted him near a large banner that read Divinity Innovations, celebrating 20 years. He was engaged in conversation with a group of executives, wearing a tailored black tuxedo, exuding an air of quiet confidence. Caught sight of her, surprise flickering across his face. Lucy's heart did a small flip as he excused himself and came over. "You came," he said, voice subdued with equal parts relief and worry. Lucy forced a bright smile, though her nerves jumped. "I had to," she whispered. "I wanted to stand by you. I hope that's okay." Hayden's entire expression softened. Without warning, he leaned in and pressed a gentle, swift kiss to her cheek, a public display that didn't go unnoticed by the people nearby. Lucy flushed, but warmth filled her chest at his affirmation. For a while, they chatted with various guests. Lucy found herself introduced as a lead designer on Divinity's upcoming brand overhaul. She noticed curious glances when Hayden hovered near her, or the way he'd place a hand at the small of her back protectively. Rumors would start, she was sure, but she tried to ignore it. She felt proud. Here she was, in a professional capacity, recognized for her talent. At one point, Hayden had to slip away to handle some crisis with an international client. Lucy found herself alone by the refreshment table, feeling a touch of anxiety creeping in. That was when a well-dressed woman, her hair in an elegant chignon, approached. "You must be Lucy," the woman said, voice friendly but penetrating. "I'm Tessa Stone, Hayden's older sister. The last time I heard him mention someone so frequently, it was about an executive hire, but you're different. I can see it in the way he looks at you." Lucy felt a blush creep up her neck, uncertain how to respond. Tessa's gaze held a mix of curiosity and protectiveness. "He's been alone too long, and I'm glad to see he's found someone to confide in." Tessa offered a brief smile. "I just hope he doesn't scare you off. The Stone family can be intense." Lucy let out a laugh, more out of relief than humor. "I appreciate the warning, but so far I'm not scared." Tessa nodded, seeming satisfied, and gave Lucy's arm a light squeeze before moving on. It was a passing moment, but Lucy knew it held significance. She was stepping into Hayden's world more fully now, meeting his family, no longer just a rumor in the corner. The thought exhilarated and intimidated her. A few minutes later, Hayden found her again, apologized for the chaos, and guided her away from the crowd. He offered a gentle smile. "Care to step outside for some fresh air?" Lucy nodded eagerly. The two of them slipped onto a balcony overlooking the city lights. A cool breeze ruffled Lucy's hair. Hayden turned to face her, the noise of the gala muffled behind the glass doors. "Thank you for coming tonight," he said, voice low. "It means more than you know." Lucy gazed into his eyes, her heart skipping. "I want to be here," she whispered. "I don't want to hide. I'm proud to be with you." Hayden reached for her hand and in a heartfelt moment pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "Then let's stop hiding," he murmured. "I'm done with secrecy. You've earned your place in this company and in my life." Just then, the memory of their very first meeting flashed through Lucy's mind, accidentally sitting in his seat on that plane. The sheer improbability that they'd find themselves here, on a balcony under glittering city lights, hearts so intertwined. Sometimes, timing changes everything, just like subscribing to this channel seems to bring unexpected surprises. But back to the story, because that fateful plane seat had sparked a path neither of them ever saw coming. In the weeks that followed the gala, Lucy found herself at the center of a mild storm of gossip. Some employees whispered that she'd gotten special treatment because she was with the boss. Others defended her talent and pointed to the results of her design work, which were indeed outstanding. Hayden told her to focus on her craft and ignore the chatter. Though occasionally stung by the rumor mill, Lucy pressed on. The new brand launch for Divinity Innovations was just days away, and she poured her soul into every design element. The day of the big brand reveal arrived. Lucy was backstage at a conference hall while Hayden prepared to address a packed audience of media, investors, and esteemed guests. Nerves fluttered in her stomach. This was the culmination of weeks of sleepless nights, last-minute tweaks, and countless design mock-ups, yet she wasn't alone. Hayden found her just minutes before he took the stage, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. "You've done incredible work," he said softly. "I want you to be out there with me." Lucy blinked in surprise. "But it's your speech, your company, You're not just anything," he cut in. "This brand is as much your labor as mine. If you feel comfortable, I'd love for you to share the spotlight." Tears pricked the corners of Lucy's eyes. She nodded, and together they stepped into the brightness of the stage lights. The presentation commenced, with Hayden speaking eloquently about divinity's evolution and future. Then he introduced Lucy as the visionary behind their updated brand identity. A hush fell over the audience as she took the microphone. Lucy cleared her throat, heart hammering, but she channeled her passion into words that explained the concept behind the new logo, color palette, and the messages they hoped to convey. The crowd responded with thunderous applause. She even caught a proud grin on Tessa's face from the front row. At the end of the presentation, camera flashes ignited as Hayden and Lucy shook hands, then shared an unplanned but heartfelt embrace. It was a public statement, a confirmation of the rumors, yes, but also of the hard work they'd poured into this project. With adrenaline pumping, Lucy felt unstoppable. When the final wave of applause died down, the rest of the day was a whirlwind of interviews and congratulatory messages. By the time evening approached, Lucy found herself standing on a deserted stretch of the conference center's rooftop terrace. The last rays of the setting sun painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. Hayden joined her, and they leaned against the terrace railing, letting silence settle comfortably between them for a few moments. "I can't believe how far we've come," Lucy finally whispered. "From that accidental seat on the plane to here." Hayden wrapped an arm around her shoulders, gently guiding her closer. "I think about it every day," he confessed. "I didn't know I could meet someone like you, someone who isn't intimidated by my position, who sees me for me." Lucy tilted her head to rest on his shoulder. "I love you," she said, quietly but firmly. It was the first time either of them had spoken those words. They hung in the air, shimmering with promise. Hayden turned and cupped her face with both hands. "I love you too," he breathed. Then he kissed her softly at first, but it deepened into a tender, unspoken vow. In that moment, Lucy realized they were no longer living a fairy tale or harboring fleeting illusions. Their connection was rooted in day-to-day realities, shared struggles, triumphs, vulnerabilities. And while she knew there would still be challenges, especially given the corporate world he inhabited, she felt confident that they'd face them as a team. A few months later, Lucy settled into a new office at Divinity Innovations, a permanent contract secured, her nameplate reading Creative Director. It was more than she ever dreamed of. She was also set to move out of her small, cramped rental and into a spacious loft closer to the main office with Hayden by her side. Their relationship had found a balance, professionally respectful, personally loving. The powerful CEO meets struggling designer narrative had given way to two adults forging a genuine partnership. Sometimes, Lucy caught herself smiling at how unpredictable life could be. She recalled how she used to dread traveling, how she'd board planes with a sense of gloom. Now, she looked forward to every trip with Hayden by her side, each one a reminder of how they first collided. She even teased him that maybe they should book economy seats more often, just to keep them humble. One late afternoon, Lucy took a short break from work to gaze out her large office window. She could see the city spread out beneath her, her city now brimming with possibility. The memories of insecurity and rejection letters felt distant, replaced by a fulfilling role and a love she never expected. Her phone buzzed and she saw a new message from Hayden. "Dinner tonight? I'm craving those noodles again." She laughed softly. This man, who had everything, still preferred the comfort of simple takeout. And she wouldn't have it any other way. With that, Lucy tapped out a quick reply, an enthusiastic yes, and grabbed her coat. As she stepped into the hallway, she marveled at how one impulsive action, taking the wrong seat on a crowded flight, had changed everything. And though the journey had been unpredictable and at times scary, she wouldn't trade any part of it. She had found love, purpose, and a future brighter than she'd ever dared to imagine.